There are several key items that I want to provide an update to you all on. Item number 1 is a economic development update. And Vice Mayor Crozier, feel free to chime in on any of these items as you see fit, as you are also on the Economic Development Corporation as well. However, as chair, I do want to report out to you on some of the high-level activities. I think that's pertinent, but since we are 50-50 partners in this with Alleghany County now. The EDC continues its focus on site development and marketing, primarily trying to transition to marketing a site as we work to develop a site. We are working to explore consultative services to further this. As you all know, we have a vacancy with the executive director position, as there was a recent resignation of Ms. Akridge. So there is efforts to look at a consultative engagement to work on those 2 goals of site development and marketing of site development, as well as marketing of the EDC. We're actively working to identify a path forward to achieve these goals, which includes reaching out to developers, investors, as well as the foundation. With that being said, are there any questions on that? We have narrowed it down to a site, and we are trying to move forward with plans as far as a path forward with financing and how do we get that site ready to go.
Are you working on getting a new director for the EDC?
At this point in time, we're looking at a consultative service, someone that has a different approach potentially to what we've done in the last 13 years. There's been discussions at the staff level between Mr. Lanford, Ms. McClung, myself, as well as with the voting members of the EDC on maybe trying a new approach with folks that are based in, other areas where there's a little bit more heavy developer and investor presence, in some of the more metropolitan areas of the state where there's a different level of ability to finance and do more of their own work with regards to redevelopment or some of the things that we're trying to achieve here. And how we do our marketing approaches to getting businesses here and how we do that outreach. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I believe the individual that we've discussed doing that with, you've met. When we talked about marketing.
Oh.
That is, yes.
Branding guy.
Yeah.
We're looking at potentially having a further discussion with that individual with the EDC board. They have expressed an interest.
Thank you.
With regards to anything else? Anything to add, Mr. Crozier? Okay. CARES funding efforts to expend, we're working feverishly to expend those dollars to comply with the Department of Labor requirements, which have been very intensive. Mr. Popovich and his firm were very gracious in providing us a very nice, succinct memo on some of the new requirements that all employers are required to comply with or face fines and penalties at this point, and that is coming from Department of Labor and Industry as well as Bosch. So it's becoming quite a ever-evolving effort. We're working to identify the necessary steps and acting on those for the second round of the CARES allocation, which was announced recently last week, which we will be receiving a second disbursement of the same dollar value that we received in early June. So we'll be getting an additional $438 some odd thousand, Mr. Bryan? $483,000. I will tell you, with even including lots of big scale projects, we are feverishly trying to figure out how we can spend it all. It's an opportunity to make us better in a lot of areas and invest in things that we need for a building, but also actually invest in a lot of contactless solutions. To date, we've identified, Mr. Bryant has taken a great lead on that with safety and risk management, opportunities for some automatic doors in areas, motionless switchers, automatic equipment in the bathrooms relating to toilets, sinks, hand dryers, motion sensor switches. We've looked at antimicrobial break room tables. We've also looked at the partition aspects that are required, as well as carpet removal, removal of fabric chairs so that they can effectively be wiped down or sprayed down, and you know, even in the absence of that, not hold germs as long. We're working to send out a memo to all joint and shared services, Mr. Bryan and myself, to let them know that we will be willing to review and potentially approve funding requests, for instance, as it may relate to improvements that are needed at the courthouse for contactless security screens. You know, right now, if you go in, you go through the pocketbook, which has a potential COVID risk exposure. So, you know, there's efforts to look at getting a scanner and x-ray machine to, you know, put your stuff through, those sorts of efforts. And, you know, the library submitted a request as well, which we've received and we do plan to act on. The Chamber of Commerce has put in a request for some of those things that I've mentioned, you know, automatic doors, a contactless toilet and sink, those kinds of things that, you know, we're working to receive those from jointly funded agencies that we and the city, we, the county, as well as the towns contribute to. So we'll keep you posted on that. The budget survey that we actually completed on the CARES funding, we will have some additional dollars available, we believe, to also do some improvements at Edgemont for contactless facility efforts, as well as potentially some ventilation improvements for the folks there, as well as there may be dollars available, as I know council had previously expressed some interest in having some dollars to additionally assist businesses impacted by COVID. So I think that there, as we work to further project out cost and get then the requests from joint and shared services to then allow you all some good projections on what may be left, because as we figured it might be upwards of maybe 150 to 180,000 left to then, and that's if we're able to spend everything. Have a discussion as to how you all would wish to administer that, whether it's through the chambers they're doing with the DHCD emergency funding, or something that would want to go to our Main Street organization to assist businesses, or you know, the EDC or something of that nature, to have those discussions. So wanted to put that bug in you all's ear as something to start to mull over and think of, you know, because we're definitely looking at there being something left over and then having the ability to program that back to something in the community. Next thing I want to give you all an update on active grants. So we have the Historic Main Street Revitalization Planning Grant, which has had really good participation so far from the community as well as staff and the management team. 7 proposals were received for our Main Street grant. It was only advertised for 14 days. So that is very good. We have a good list of very reputable studios, as well as some that are new to submitting proposals for the city. So this is exciting. The review panel's been composed for that. It will actually be myself, Mr. Bryan. We picked a joint entity with us on that grant, which is Ms. Hammond from the chamber. Well, also, because we have about 12 folks on the planning management team, so we picked a smaller group to review all 7. Ms. Hammond, and then Mr. Ray Lights from Lumos, from the business community, and we would narrow it down to the top 3, and then the full group would then review the final top 3 to make a selection, you know, for interview purposes. The Joint Opportunity Zone grant between the city and county is progressing very nicely. The shared goal and initiative there is we're working to highlight spaces viable for mixed-use commercial purposes. One thing we've tried to focus on, I at least have for the city, we have some great prospective capacity with the Boardman's building, which was Peebles, as well as the former Kroger building, to either have it as a single commercial entity or multi-unit commercial entity for, you know, retail space of that nature, or other stuff. So focusing on viable commercial opportunities, as well as looking at diversified housing by focusing on our surplus schools in the region, of really giving us the option of having that mixed-use market where there is rental apartments. Not one size fits all for folks. There's been a lot of success in recent years in localities out here in Southwest Virginia. Vinton is a great example when they did with their surplus schools with 1 to 2, I believe it's just 1 to 2 bedroom lofts. But we have that opportunity here, so that's what we're pushing with that grant. It's commercial space and then diversified housing. So there's 3 schools in that. So there's former Clifton High School, is it Boiling Springs? Falling Springs, and then the former Rivermont School, which is in the city. The Jackson Street grant, we've requested an extension on the planning grant, and that was really done to finalize the formal report for DHCD and get all conceptual drawings and design done by September 30th. The next step in advancing that would be a construction improvement grant application, which we will be working with CHA on that. The ARC grant for the drone zone, we are continuing to work with DHCD and stakeholders on updates to resubmit. That has been an ongoing effort. And I just want to give you guys a brief update on our current active projects. Maple Avenue, the phase 2 began last week. Final completion date, weather dependent, is February 14th per contract. It definitely could be sooner. They are making some great progress out there. South Alleghany Avenue, the paving will officially start. We got a date, September 14th, and that will last 5 days. So we will make sure that we get ample notice out to the businesses in that corridor, which are a heavy industry, as well as the folks that live in that area, that there will be potential traffic impacts. But it's September 14th, and it will last 5 days. Ashland Avenue in South Carpenter, it's progressing nicely, and it is in line with the project's schedule at this time. It's slated to be completed in early November. It's 11% complete overall with the efforts underway right now with Ashland and Carpenter. As you all may recall, I shared with you all, we lost some time due to utility conflicts. Namely, there were some overhead conflicts, but it was the gas lines and there were some complications there. We have at this point in time started to realize some cost savings, which is good news. They've been able to shorten the length of their nails by 10 feet. There's savings per nail that they're able to do that. There's also been some less extensive excavation that is having to occur. So we are starting to realize potentially we could save upwards of $90,000 to $100,000 with the project approach. As I said, it's one of those things you don't know until you're in there, and they really start working. But they are working to, 1, make sure it's secure and sound, but 2, that we're getting value for our dollar. With that being said, are there any questions on any of those areas that I've provided updates? I realize it's a lot of information.
Council, any questions? Thank you, Chris.
Actually, Mr. Onaitis, the paving project on Alleghany, is that going to be an around-the-clock effort, or is that going to be a mostly at night to reduce impact with businesses, or is that going to be during the day? Do we have an idea of how that's going to be done?
I did not receive an update on the timing of the work. Traditionally, this is not a traditional area because that sees traffic 24/7 because of its location to major industry in Jevity and West Rock. Normally work is done between 9 and 4, so you miss morning rush hour, but this is not a normal corridor on 220. So that will be something that we will follow up with and ask. The contractor on that job is going to be Alleghany Asphalt, so I don't think it's an issue for them to provide us a time they're great to work with. So we'll follow up and just see what they plan.
I would think it'd be daytime paving. The rest of those projects do, they've been daytime. I don't know why they've changed, but they might be a good option for them. Cut down, of course, I wouldn't want to. Somebody laying asphalt in front of my house 3 o'clock.
It does create a bit of a noise factor.
I was just wondering out of curiosity.
I think they'll do one lane at a time to then help to minimize that.
Yeah, he would.
Would that upset you, Brian?
Yep.
Let's just stick with daytime paving.
Yeah, and traditionally with high traffic areas like that, they'll do one lane at a time on each side, so 5 days is not overly extensive, so it should have minimal impact.